Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Inevitable, that podcast that is The Trap. Because this week we watched Assignment 6, also known as The Trap.
Written by PJ Hammond.
Directed by David Foster.
And aired from August 19th to August 31st, 1982.
Nice. We've made it to the end. We're at the end of Sapphire and Steel, of yet another show, actually. And we finished another show.
Yeah, 3 shows in the bag now for Inevitable.
Well, this is a lot less ceremonious of an ending than maybe Sapphire and Steel deserves, but alas, it's what it's getting, so...
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just, I guess, preface everything else we're about to dive into by just saying I wish it didn't end here. I think, I was becoming attached to Sapphire and Steel. I was just really starting to like this show. I think it was getting better every single week, and then it just ended. It's ended. It's done now. There's no more.
It's gone. You're gonna have to let it go. Let it go, Kiyan. Let it go.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Is maybe that's for the best. Like maybe Sapphire and Steel is so well remembered because it goes out like this.
Well, I mean, the other thing about wanting it to continue is that it ends on a hilariously huge cliffhanger.
Well, it also ends on like a thing of them probably not being able to get out. Like I was thinking this right as soon as I finished the episode of like, man, what if this episode was like against all odds some sort of like ratings smash hit, and they were forced to continue making the show? Like, where do they go from here? Like, how do they get Sapphire and Steel out of the situation that they wrote them into in this episode?
I mean, it'd be the same thing as like on Star Trek, and I know I've told the story on Trust Your Doctor before where, the Next Generation was doing well in the ratings, but there was the potential for it to be canceled after season, I think this was 4, maybe it was 3. And the guy who wrote the finale was like, they're not going to hire me back for next season. Like, I already know they're going to fire me. So he basically had Picard get assimilated by the Borg and become the enemy. And at the end, the episode ends with Picard as the enemy. Like, he's like, and the episode ends with Riker telling the crew to fire on their former captain. And that's how it ends. And like, that's the season cliffhanger. And then like next season, the writer was basically like, that'll like, if they gets renewed, that's next season's problem, how you resolve it. Like, we figure that out next year. And then they hired him back, and he was like, well, wrote myself into a corner. I mean, just be the same thing. Like, they did this cliffhanger, and it's clearly like, that's a next year problem if we make another episode. And obviously there was no next year, but they would just come up with some sci-fi mumbo jumbo to get them out. Like, they will. Like, Silver would probably show up and save them, because notably Silver is absent from the trap at the end of the story.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I actually watched this little mini documentary that had PJ Hammond, Sean
Reardon?
Sean O'Riordan, David McCallum, and Joanna Lumley, all talking about their time on Sapphire and Steel. And I'll go into that more at the end, but apparently PJ Hammond's original script actually had Silver trapped in there with them. And his idea was that, like, if they were ever forced, or if they ever had to, or if they ever wanted to continue Sapphire and Steel, Silver, as a technician or whatever, would be able to get them out.
Yeah, so they clearly had a plan.
Yeah.
Although, again, like, it's a PJ Hammond, I don't really know what's going on plan.
Yeah, the interview was great because, no hate or anything, but, like, PJ Hammond's, like, entire, like, take on this show is that he was just, like, I don't, like, the fans probably are probably way more invested in this show than, like, he was kind of essentially explaining his decisions for the show, and they were very mundane and very, like, easy to understand, which is, like, the opposite of, like, what this show is in people's memories, But he said that the reason why Silver actually doesn't appear in the end is because David McCallum convinced him to change the script so that it's just Sapphire and Steel, because he felt that since the show was called Sapphire and Steel, It should just end with Sapphire and Steel. And frankly, I'm inclined to agree with that.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that, but I still also think there's an element of, well, we need to like leave
An element.
we need to leave a way to get out of this later on, right?
And there's still again that element of Silver being able to show up. There's nothing saying he can't,
Mm-hmm.
even if he's not in there with them. But anyway, we should explain how it all gets there, because this episode is, if any story of Sapphire and Steel is a wild ride, it's this one.
Yeah. This was an intense episode, actually anxiety-inducing. Like in episode 4, I was like, oh God, what's going to happen? Are they going to get out of this one? And no, they don't. But
episode 4 had, I can't wait to talk about this, because I just want to talk about it now. Episode 4, had 2 moments that really appealed to me and that really actually surprised me. One was the fact that they introduced a new plot element 7 minutes before the end of the show. We had not heard about the box that sends you back in time before that. It was just crazy and pulled off extremely well, I think. The other is that at the end when they show up back in the cafe, there's 2 minutes left in this entire show. And you're like, how the hell is this going to end? Where is it going to go from here? I had no idea. No clue.
Turns out really, really bleakly.
Yeah.
But we got to talk about the journey to get to the destination.
Yeah, you're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry.
So it begins, and my very first note is, okay, I'm going to stop you right there. You built a set of a street corner. Why not just literally go outside? This street corner must exist in the same dimension as the train platform from Assignment 2.
It's a gas station, though, right?
Yeah, it's like a service station with a diner next to it.
Right. Looks weirdly, I don't know, American.
Maybe it is.
Maybe it is, but I don't think so, given that all the people who show up there are British. And they seem...
Maybe it's the weird British part of America that we referenced one time on Trust Your Doctor.
Yeah. Freaking 4 years ago. Yeah, you're right.
Just more evidence that it exists.
One thing you notice right off the bat is all the corporate logos everywhere. Really indicating that this is the 80s, or at least present day, which back then, would have been the 80s.
Well, it's the present day because they arrive and Steel is like, what's the time? And Sapphire says the present. And I'm like, wait, what?
I didn't understand, or I didn't realize until this episode that each agent is assigned a time. And that Sapphire and Steel were assigned the 80s, roughly, / late 70s.
Yeah. And Silver and Lead, I guess, are just also in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not realize that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. But again, that just goes to show the nature of the show, which is well, you just figure it out on your own.
Or figure it out as we go along.
Also true.
That's somewhat the nature of all TV.
Yeah, I don't know. Some shows do it more so than other shows. Some shows sit you down and go, all right, here's what's going to happen. And then there's some Sapphire and Steel, which I think I've wavered week to week on whether it really tells you what's going on or not. But I think in general, it actually doesn't. I do think I agree with the original assessment that it doesn't really tell you what's going on.
No, it doesn't.
Just really, really keen now, especially after this episode, to see PJ Hammond's episodes for Torchwood.
Yeah, same. Since we're rapidly approaching Torchwood on Trust Your Doctor, or Doctor Who podcast, check that out.
Well, by the time this goes out, I think we'll have just started episode 1 or 2 of Torchwood.
Yeah.
Given how far in advance we're recording this.
We're going to be this far in advance for our next show as well.
Nice.
But we'll get there at the end. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh yeah, we get to reveal what we're doing next. Get excited, gang.
Some people already know. At least one of our listeners already knows.
It's not hard
because
to
it
guess.
was Keaton we told him when he was on a few weeks ago.
All right, so they're at this diner, and Silver just shows up, and he's like, "I've been here for a while. What took you guys so
I've been
long?" And
here
they're
for
like, "Well,
years. No.
it's been 84 years."
And they're like, yeah, that's weird. Why were you assigned?
Silver has been assigned. Just Silver alone.
Sapphire and Steel does lend itself well to potential spin offs, none of which it's really gotten, but you could have like a Silver show, you know? He's compelling enough.
Yeah, he's kind of lame on his own though.
Yeah, it would have to
Like
be.
without Sapphire to play off of or Steel, like he's kind of lame.
That's true. It would have to be Silver and someone else.
Lead.
Well, yeah, Silver and Lead could be cool.
Can you imagine Silver and Lead?
Yeah, actually, I kind of can. I think it would be good.
Silver and Brass. Bring back
Yeah,
Brass.
Silver and Brass could actually be really entertaining. With Brass being like a total noob and Silver just getting frustrated.
ITV, if you're listening, email us. You can scoop us before the BBC gets us because they haven't hired us yet.
Now's your chance.
So we see two people sitting in the diner, and Sapphire replays like how they arrived by, I guess, creating a time image for Steel and Silver, and then they go inside, and Sapphire tells Steel to ask them questions because she doesn't know how to intimidate people.
Yeah, so I believe that Steel kind of suggests to them that they're in the future, and they're like, "Oh, we know."
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, we know. We know. We're just waiting to get back to our own time now. You know, at some point it has to happen, right?"
Which I think this was kind of done in a funny way. It's like Sapphire and Steel and Silver like don't really believe that, or they're kind of shocked that like, whoa, like you guys know what's happening. Like,
Yeah, that should have been the first indication that something was hinky,
right.
you know, with these people, but it wasn't.
I guess, yeah, and that's the thing. Sapphire and Steel are not clued into it, and as a viewer, I was not suspicious whatsoever. But like looking back, like how the hell did I not see any of this coming? You know?
Well, they're a little bit suspicious because they claim they're from 1948, and they're a little suspicious of this. They don't believe it, so they're coming up with all these tests to find out if this couple is actually from 1948. Like Silver offers to cook food, and they say no, and he says, "Well, do you have your ration book?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not getting food, so I don't need to give you the ration, but yeah, here, if it'll satisfy your curiosity," because the car is also from 1948, which is why they're trying to confirm that these people are actually from 1948. Because
Right.
Sapphire's also got that power where she can just touch things and figure out what year it was made. Again, though, going way back to assignment 1, like, how does she touch this car and go, "Oh yeah, the car was made in 1948," and not like, "Ah yes, this steel was minted in 1942 with the composite carbon atoms were made 500 years ago." Like, how deep does it go? But anyway.
Maybe she does. Maybe she just gets all the information and just vocalizes whatever's useful at the time.
Maybe. But we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, and we never will find out. So
Unless, like, we listen to those big Finnish audios.
I doubt they reveal that detail.
Give that tiny detail.
But the reason why they have this car is that their sort of story is that they're married, but not to each other. And they decided, I guess, to elope. So they did that, and they pulled up into this gas station and then walked into the building, and suddenly it was the 80s.
It's apparently been 8:54 in this diner for the past 6 hours.
Yeah, you see the little clock ticking back and forth, and it won't, pass 8:54 or whatever it was.
And Silver mentions that the clock works, it just doesn't move, which is how they know that the time has stopped and not the clocks.
Right.
So they the pinball machine. Oh, actually, before there's an old man who works at the garage, who runs the garage, and apparently, like, you can pull up here for help literally any time of day, including at like midnight,
Yeah.
because he's there all day.
And I guess never sleeps.
And Sapphire and Steel kind of run into him. He's kind of like a shadow, and then he phases into existence, and he says something, and then he phases out of existence again. And Sapphire and Steel are like, well, that was weird.
Shrug. We should also mention.
Well, weirdness is their profession.
We should also mention that this assignment is unlike any other Sapphire and Steel I've ever been on because they don't really know why they were assigned.
Uh-huh.
That was the first indication to me because I don't know about you, but I thought that this story was just going to be another random story and that it wouldn't like actually have an ending.
I knew how it ended, so I
You
knew.
did.
Yeah. Remember when Keith was on and he was like, Dylan seems like he knows how it ends.
Right.
And he's trying not to. Yeah, I knew that they got trapped for all eternity at the end of the show.
When did you, or how long have you known that?
Since before we started.
Oh, wow. Wow. Alrighty.
Hey, but I did a good job hiding it.
Yeah, you didn't even indicate that you knew except that one time.
But
Yeah,
even
but I
still,
thought-
like, even still knowing, like, I didn't know exactly how it was going to play out. And I was still captivated by the story. Like, I still found really interesting.
Yeah, that's why I'm usually okay with spoilers. Is like just knowing what happens doesn't mean you know like what leads up to that happening or what the context of it is. Because you can watch Blake 7, and I'm about to spoil that. So if you are listening to this and you've never watched that, don't listen to what I'm about to say. You can
Use
watch
the, like,
Blake's
15-second ahead button.
Yeah, you can watch Blake 7 and know that they all die at the end, but like you don't know how that all like they could all just like die of cancer at the end or something. Like they could all just get cancer
Old
and die.
age.
And
Of
like,
old age.
exactly. They could die of old. Like you don't know until you've watched it, like what the context of that is.
Yeah, unless you spoil the context as well.
Yeah, it's true. But at that point, like, damn, you're getting pretty close to actually just having watched the thing.
Yeah, so the pinball machine starts up, and Silver was like, damn, I was going to play that pinball machine. And the woman is kind of like, we don't have to answer your questions. Like, you have no authority here. Like, there's no reason why we need to answer your questions. And then time moves. And that's how episode 1 ends. Your time moves forward 10 minutes. Which is 9:04 now.
Right.
Episode 2 begins with Steele accusing the man and the woman of running away from something, and that's why they're hiding out in this diner. And they're like, no, but they get really aggressive about it, and he's like, so you are running away from something. And then the man reveals that he's running away from his wife, and the woman is running away from her husband. Which I think Kiyan already mentioned that they were eloping.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Sapphire is seeing some ghostly shadows about.
Uh-huh.
Or no, I think at this point it's the two people turn into shadows. I don't know. Someone turns into a shadow.
Yeah, the two people turn into shadows and then phase back into existence, but also Silver's seeing like shadows of other people. So the old man who runs the garage, and I think at the very end of the episode she sees an image of Johnny Jack.
Yep.
Who doesn't actually show up till episode 3, though. While Steele is interrogating the man and the woman, they reveal some more information about how they got there and how they just stopped basically for gas. And then the woman kind of corners Sapphire and is like, you can come with us, right? Like, if we drove away with you in the car, because the thing is that the service station is kind of surrounded by some sort of barrier, time barrier.
They just call it a barrier. They don't really ever explain or detail it any further than that.
Yeah. So the man is wondering if he takes Sapphire with them, will they be able to break through the time barrier and go back to 1948? And then she says, like he says, what would happen if we take you? And she says, what would you like to happen? And then the man's face is just like, the expression on his face is just, ah, shit, I didn't actually think about that. Like, what would I want to happen?
So yeah, they're trapped completely. But at some point, and I think it's very close to now, Sapphire, Silver, and Steel regroup, and they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on, because we find out that like even Silver doesn't really know. They weren't really assigned. They were just like compelled to come here or something.
Yeah, well, so there's a little bit of infighting here actually, which I think is when we find out that they don't actually know why they're there, like for the first time proper, because Silver was there 6 hours or 8 hours earlier. 6 hours. They like accuse Silver of knowing something that they don't because he was there so much earlier. And then he says, well, you were here so much later, so like maybe you find out why we were assigned and you just haven't told me yet, right? And they're like, no, we literally know nothing. And they have this kind of fight about it and then realize that all three of them are totally in the dark.
Right. I think it's Sapphire who says this, but this is when she comes up with the idea that maybe she says maybe we're the event or something, like maybe they're the reason why all this is happening, or maybe them being there is the thing that is what's wrong with time or something.
Yeah, she also mentions that she senses pain and suffering and like a death of two people in the surrounding area, but they don't know when or why or what happened. And I think Steel or Silver postulates that it might be the two people in the diner right now whose pain and suffering she's sensing.
Yeah, she calls it an emotion from the past, but yeah. We'll see what happens with that in a bit.
So time moves forward again. Now it's 9:24. There was a storm that started and then briefly stopped. And that's where episode 2 ends.
Yeah, well, so in the midst of the storm, some other person has come in, and it's Johnny Jack.
He comes in episode 3.
Yeah, but we see his shadow in episode 2. Like, that's the ending of episode 2.
We also forgot to mention during the whole conversation, Sapphire also postulates that based on how the events are playing out in the diner, someone who hasn't revealed themselves wants them to know that they're here.
Right. Oh, we also skipped the other thing, which is that they actually talk to the old man and find out that he's from 1925.
Yeah.
So
he's further displaced from time than the rest of the gang.
Right. And I liked the inclusion of all the American Express and like Coca-Cola logos and such, because at this point I was starting to wonder, like, man, are they really even in the 80s anymore? Like maybe they actually are just in like a totally different time. But I think the logos help indicate that, like, yeah, this is the present day, because those wouldn't have been around in 47 or 825 or whenever the other people were from.
Mm-hmm.
So episode 3 begins. Oh, we also skipped the prank call that Sapphire gets.
It's not really a prank call so much as it's just like someone telling her the time over and over again.
Right. So episode 3 begins with, well, where episode 2 left off, with Johnny Jack
coming in, seeing his nursery rhyme, and I was like, is this another nursery rhyme? I tried to look it up and I couldn't find.
Yeah, you know, Jurgen actually gave us some information about nursery rhymes, which I'll touch on at the end, but he messaged us there, so
nice.
A little bit there. But yeah, this guy is from 1957, so even more, weird displacement.
He takes the stuffed animal, because Sapphire finds a stuffed animal on the ground, and he takes the animal from Sapphire and pins it to his coat with all the other stuffed animals. And he goes into the diner as well, and they ask him some questions and find out that he was part of a traveling troupe of performers.
Or so he says,
And yeah, so he claims. And he got separated from the group, and that's how he ended up there. He doesn't know where they were going or where they were from because everybody else in the troupe usually figures that out, and he just follows them, basically.
Right. This is also, I think, the first time in Sapphire and Steel that we get the Sapphire and Steel theme in an episode.
Yeah, I noticed this. I actually really liked that, though. I was like, oh yeah, that's the theme.
Yeah, and I think if there's one story they were going to use it in, this is the perfect one.
Well, because it's the last one. But if it hadn't been the last one, then, like, I don't know. You know.
All right.
I don't know. Well, it works well because it serves as kind of a bookend, right? Because it's in the final story that we finally hear the theme music in the actual story. But if this hadn't been the final one and we had, like, come back with another story next week, then, you know, would it have been as impactful to hear the music in this story? I mean, maybe. I also think maybe not.
Yeah, I just have no idea. So Silver is actually inspecting this guy's tambourine now. Because he comes in holding a tambourine. He comes in threatening people, pointing at people like it's a gun. And it's just not. But Silver gets his hands on it, and he's like, hey, Steel, did you know that every musical instrument has its own recording device?
Yeah, I was like,
This is
what?
also, like, one of those things of, like, man, they're introducing more new stuff. Like, this is going to end in, like, 35 minutes total. And they're introducing new elements. New plot/story elements, I should say.
Well, Silver also gains the, I think, new power to just instantly duplicate items.
Yeah, I don't think he had that power in Assignment 3. I don't think he really did anything in Assignment 3.
No, he didn't. Well, except holding that light bulb and having it light up.
Yeah.
He's good with machines. That's his power.
We do get a little bit more about the relationship between Sapphire and Steel and Silver, because Silver is apparently a technician while Sapphire and Steel are operators, and the technician is like a level below operator or something.
So he's a noob. We get more Sapphire and Steel lore in episode 4, but I'm going to save it for when we get there. But this tambourine, so Silver made a duplicate of the tambourine and gave it to Johnny Jack, and the real one he's disassembling, because apparently if he disassembles it, he can find out more about the item. So he disassembles the tambourine, and he says that it's made a noise, but it's never played a song. And Steel's like, well, it's basically a drum, right? Like, how do you play a song on a drum? And Silver's like, well, you know, they have their own kind of music that they play, but this tambourine's never done that. It's only made random noise.
Uh-huh.
Which is another indication that these people are kind of possibly not who they say they are.
Right. At this point, though, they actually decide that I don't remember what it is. They either want the car or they want to get inside the car or something.
Yeah, they could. Well, so because the tambourine is so suspicious, they want to disassemble the car so Silver can analyze it.
And to do that, they need to distract the people, because every time they tried to get near the car or investigate it, the guy mostly would stop them.
Mm-hmm. So they're going to create a time image of the car, but which Sapphire can do in combination with Silver's powers. Steel has not used his powers since Assignment 1, in case anyone is counting.
His power's pretty useless most of the time.
He can freeze time. He can literally freeze time. Not like metaphorical time has stopped, time is frozen. He can literally get so cold he freezes time.
I don't remember the freezing time, but I only remember that he can get really cold. I have no memory of him freezing time.
Well, because they put the time ghosts into the rock, and then he freezes them into the rock.
Oh. Well, even still, like, what is he gonna do with that? Especially because like time is already stopped. Like, is he just gonna stop it more? Like,
Sapphire gets all the cool powers.
I do like how their powers are out of the ordinary, though. I will say that. Like,
It's true. It's not like flight or invisibility.
yeah,
It's you can sense when this object was built by touching it.
I also like. I get the impression from this show that they have more abilities that they're not sharing. You know.
Do you get that impression from the fact that Sapphire gains a new ability every week?
I guess maybe.
That's where I got that impression.
But like, yeah, it's such a mystery. I'm glad it's a mystery. Like, I think it would lose its touch, it would lose its magic if all of this would actually, if you were to actually sit down and explain.
Yeah, so much of the charm of this show comes from like not really knowing what the hell Sapphire and Steel are, what the heck they do, just knowing that every week it succeeds. Mostly every week.
Yeah,
5 out of 6 is a good success percentage.
Yeah, I mean we're at the end here of this show, and we're still like kind of speculating, like, who are these characters? Like, what are what's even going on here? I like that. So anyway, Sapphire and Silver do some sneaking around to try and get in the car.
While Steel goes into the diner and talks with him, and when they ask him where his friends are, he just goes, I don't know. As if he wouldn't know where in this one building they could be.
He went in there with no plan and completely flubbed everything.
I mean, it's just like Assignment 5 when he had to like turn to Sapphire and go, what's my name? What's my name?
At the end of this story, when Sapphire goes like, we worked too well together, Steel, it should have just flashed back to like all of their incompetence moments.
Flashback to Sapphire getting taken into the painting in Assignment 1. Flashback to Steel trapped in barbed wire in Assignment 2. Steel getting attacked by the swan in Assignment 3.
What happened in Assignment 4? Oh, them getting frozen in place.
Frozen in the painting, in the photograph in Assignment 4. Steel not remembering his name in Assignment 5. They just end the flashback with Steel going, nah, that can't be it. No.
No, you should say you're right. Anyway, that's our that's best left for the fan fictions.
Oh no!
Because
I wonder if there is Sapphire and Steel fan fiction.
I'm sure there are. There have to be.
Oh, boy.
I'm sure some of them are pretty good. I've been reading.
I'm sure some of them are pretty
bad too.
Bad.
Yeah, I've been reading some pretty good fan fictions recently.
Is that an admission you want to make on recording?
Why not?
All right, you know what? Sure, more power to you. Power to the people.
Fan fictions get the reputation of being bad, but there's some pretty good ones out there.
That's because the overwhelming majority of them are terrible.
Yeah, well, look, that's because the overwhelming majority of like things that are produced by people in this world are terrible.
Whenever we shut down Decorative Vegetable Studios, the final thing we ever release should just be like a 4-hour audio drama version of My Immortal featuring you and me as every character.
All right, why not?
Now we really have an incentive never to stop doing.
No, now we have an incentive to stop. Speak for yourself.
Have you ever seen the modern classics Word DocX version of My Immortal, which has like every chapter of My Immortal plus like...
I sent you that, man. Like, I was the one who...
Were you the one who sent me that? Okay, that's... Okay. I'm actually glad that I brought that up then, because it's been sitting on my computer and I was like, where the hell did I find this? And I had no idea. So I'm actually glad that you told me it was you who sent it to me.
Well, you're lucky that you still have it because apparently it's just been like erased from the internet now. Yeah, I
Great.
I deleted it long ago, or shortly after I found it, because I realized I didn't want to read My Immortal again. But now I can't find it again.
Fantastic. Where's my Sapphire and Steel version of My Immortal? It's just about them stuck in the diner for 10 years.
Goth versions of Sapphire and Steel.
It's goth with an
Oh yeah,
M.
sorry.
Inobi Darkness Sapphire Alzheimer's Way.
What?
I don't know.
Wait, what?
Trying to make a play on Inobi Darkness Dementia Raven Way.
Oh, gotcha.
The main, the starring character. Mustn't forget Dumbledore. Anyway. So, at the end of episode 3, Sapphire realizes that it was their suffering that she was sensing, and it wasn't an emotion from the past, it was from the future. And that the people in the diner are transcendental beings who are almost like Sapphire and Steel, but answer to a higher authority.
Right. So there's this part right before that where the woman confronts Steel, and then later all three of them, and says that she wants to help, and she has secret information about the guy. And I really like this scene because, like, every time she talks, there's like this clicking noise, and you don't realize it at first, but it becomes more apparent as the scene goes on. And Sapphire and Steel realize it as you do. And eventually they realize that she has some device like wired to her that is causing that, and that prevents her from like speaking freely.
Right.
So they remove that, and then this is when she reveals the stuff about the transcendental beings. Or not exactly that, but Sapphire and Steel and Silver extrapolate that from what she says.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we get this actually really, I think, chilling moment where all the random characters that we've been seeing are now all wearing suits, and they're obviously part of some sort of coalition.
Mm-hmm. Suits like steel and silver, except way less fashionable.
Yeah, there is a thing of like, you kind of think, oh wow, are these the other elements that were mentioned in the intro? And I don't think they are, but there is some element of that, of like, because Steel and Silver wear suits, so you kind of think that. But then again, Lead wasn't wearing a suit. So
yeah, Led just showed up like in whatever he was wearing to bed that day. So they decide to try and escape because it turns out the time skips are increasing in duration. So first it was 10 minutes, and then it was 20, and then another time skip happens now, which is 40 minutes. And Silver comes in and he's like, look, the next time skip is going to be quadrupled now. It's going to be 4 times 40, and then we'll have 4 times 4 times 40. And Steel's like, this is problematic. Because basically everything's breaking down.
right.
The transcendental beings are looking for a box of some sort, and we don't know what the box is yet. But Silver finds it in the car, underneath the car, and he duplicates it using his instant duplication power.
Right. This is what I was talking about before, is like they introduced the box like 10 minutes before the end of the show. And I really liked that. They actually pulled it off.
Yeah, surprising. Unlike what is it? Warriors of the Deep, which introduces this third faction at the end of episode 3, and then just immediately kills everybody involved in that faction off at the start of episode 4. So it's like, what was the point?
But when Silver gets the box, they actually reveal that it has the ability to, well, it can do 2 things, at least 2 things, I guess, which is that it can look into the future, or show you the future, and that it can send you back into the past. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like there was some sort of mechanism where, like, if you open the box slowly, it shows you the future, and if you snap it open, it sends you back into the past.
Yeah, but that's... who knows how it works? Who knows? So when Silver brings this to Steel, they get cornered by the old man, and he tries to convince Silver to come back because he's like, I can't save them, but I can save you, Silver. Because apparently the trap was only set for Sapphire and Steel. It wasn't set for Silver.
Yeah, apparently.
And the fact that Silver is there is an accident, essentially.
I thought he was part of the trap unknowingly.
Potentially.
Yeah. But you really think... I really thought Silver was going to do it for a second there.
I thought so too, but then he goes, ha-ha, and he snaps open the box and sends the old man back to the Triassic period. Because the two other men, Johnny Jack and the man, he's just credited as man, threatened to send Silver back 100 trillion years or whatever to the Triassic period, or 100 billion years.
Right.
Not 100 trillion. 100 million, actually, would be, yeah. And then, so Steel now is like, well, since we have the box, it's time for us to be the hunters and not the hunted. And they immediately just send Johnny Jack back into, he's gone. He's Triassic period.
Yep. They make the decision to get the woman out. I think Silver is really against it. Sapphire is kind of against it. But again, we see like the soft-hearted nature of Steel coming out, where he's the one who's like, no, guys, we have to do this.
Turns out to be their undoing. But...
yeah. So they try and escape, or at least Sapphire does, with the woman, while Steel and Silver are looking for the man because they want to send him back to the Triassic.
And they don't find him, but Sapphire does, because he basically finds her and is like, well, I'm going to send you back now, because there are two boxes, so he's got a box too. And then we just kind of smash cut to a completely different diner.
Well, Sapphire calls Steel and Silver to her location. And I don't know that we see them there. But then, yeah, we cut to a different diner.
And Sapphire and Steel come in.
Now that I think about it, is it supposed to be the same diner? It's not, but is it like supposed to be?
I don't think so. It's like way too different of a design to be the same diner. It's like really far from the other diner.
Huh.
In terms of interior design, so I can't imagine it would be. Otherwise, they would just use the same diner set. Right?
I thought it was. Like, I couldn't tell, actually. Like, I was wondering if it was the same one or not. It looked like it could have been the same one from a different angle.
It looked way different to me.
Yeah, I don't know. But Sapphire and Steel walk in, and the man and the woman are sitting there, and they're like, "Hey, sup?"
Hey.
They ask what year.
So they ask the they ask the man and the woman what year it is.
And it's 1947. And they're still trying. Steel, I guess, is still trying to save the woman. So he pulls her away from the man. But it turns out that was all part of the trap.
Yeah, because Steel pulls out the box and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna threaten you now.
Get ready! I'm about to threaten you."
The man pulls out his own box, and he's like, well, I guess I won't need this anymore. And he opens it, and it's just a chess set. And Steel's like, wait, what? And then the woman reveals that she was in on it the whole time. She's like, yeah, this was actually the trap. Goodbye. And they vanish. And Steel opens his box, and it's also a chess set. And then they look out the windows, and it's just like the empty void of space. I wrote a note here. I was like, oh, it's okay. They're just in me and Clara's TARDIS. From the end of Hellbent.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it ends.
Yeah, I'm really starting to understand the Scarred for Life thing with shows like this, Blake 7, Children of the Stones. Like, man, what were they showing back in the day? Like, what the hell?
Why did so many of these television shows end by killing off all of their lead cast, or most of, Children of the Stones, obviously, like Adam and Matt survive, but Blake 7 just kills everyone off. Sapphire and Steel traps them for all eternity. I can see now why British children grew up with the idea that happy endings are a myth.
And the show that we're going to be watching next doesn't necessarily, or doesn't, I should just say, have a ending where all ends well either.
Is the next show we watched, like, was it ever tailored as a kids show?
I don't think so, but just
I mean, that doesn't stop kids from watching it.
Exactly. But like, even still, like, kids show or not, like the ending of that show, which I'm really hyping up for some reason, is pretty mind blowing and not happy.
I'm ready. All right.
I not knowing that this was going to happen, I couldn't believe, like, when it started to zoom out and the Sapphire and Steel were framed in that window against the backdrop of this vast like blackness of space, and the end theme started playing. Like, I was pretty blown away.
Yeah, I mean, it's a powerful ending. It's a powerful ending because you just pull back and there's nothingness outside the diner, and you're like, wow, there's like no obvious way how they can get out of this at all.
I guess at the time you might think like, oh yeah, they might find a way out in the next season, or they might just do it like they did the Master on Doctor Who, where he just comes back and there's no explanation. But I guess as the years kind of ticked on, it's just like, oh, okay, they're still there. They're still stuck
forever, not getting out. We forgot to mention the extra Sapphire and Steel lore we find out, which is that Sapphire and Steel are paired up together because they're like the best possible pairing or something. They work really well together. I think we briefly mentioned that bit, but apparently that means that like the transcendental beings and also potentially the other elements like aren't super happy with the Sapphire Steel pairing because they work too well together.
Right, and it does seem like all the other elements work alone. The other ones we saw did, at least, lead and silver.
Mm-hmm. We also, the transcendental beings were apparently defeated by Sapphire and Steel's race and imprisoned like millions of years in the past and have somehow escaped that.
Yeah.
I think we got that in episode 4 as well. Yeah, really good ending. Really good show, actually. It definitely picked up, like, starting from the ending of Assignment 2 for me, like, on through the end was just all, like, pretty much solid gold.
Yeah, too bad we never see gold.
You do in the audio dramas.
Oh, huh.
He's played by Mark Gatiss, I think.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I also know a big spoiler about him, too.
Wow. I'm probably going to listen to those audios, so, yeah.
So I won't spoil it for you.
Or more than I already have, because I've already listened to some of them slightly. But yeah, I agree. I think I will say, I thought and still think that the first two stories rather, are bad. I don't think they're good. I think they're the first things we've watched for Inevitable that I would say are bad. But after that, it's amazing. Assignment 3 and onwards, I think, are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first of the 3 shows we've watched that I think is a real mixed bag like that, because Star Cops started out pretty strong and ended on kind of a weak note, and Children of the Stones was the opposite. It started kind of weak but ended on what I would say is a pretty strong note. But I don't think either of them really had the valleys or the peaks that Sapphire and Steel did.
We flew higher than we've ever flown before, but we also went lower than we've ever been before. On this show, anyway.
Yeah.
I would still watch Assignment 1 over literally any of the Redux episodes that we did for Trust Your Doctor. Like, so far, anyway.
Yeah,
maybe Mind Warp will blow my mind.
Maybe it'll warp your mind beyond recognition.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said, both by us and by John and Keith? And
every other remaining fan of Sapphire and Steel.
Yeah,
all 10 of them.
I think, we mentioned this on Star Cops of how, like, Star Cops maybe came too early, how it would have maybe done better in the 2000s or now. I think Sapphire and Steel would as well. This type of, like, weird, what the hell is even going on, sci-fi/fantasy is actually really popular right now. So maybe, like, a modern interpretation of Sapphire and Steel with a slightly faster pace, not too much faster, because I think the slow pace is part of it.
Right.
Could be really popular.
Yeah, and also the I mean, if you did that, you'd have to be really careful to try to keep the mysterious nature of the whole show, right? Because I think there is a tendency for shows nowadays, though, to even if things are weird, to over-explain
Definitely.
to the point of boredom, like what's going on. Because
Yeah,
part of the charm of
definitely.
this show is, like I said earlier, the fact that you don't know what's going on, and the show never sits you down and goes, "Okay, here's what happened." Like, if you go back, just thinking about the episodes we did, like a lot of them we were like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is how the episode ended. Like, this is what I saw happen, and this is how I think it happened. But the show never tells you that's what happens. It just does it, and then like you're left wondering, like, is that what happened?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
especially in this episode, they phase into that diner, but you don't know how they got there. They're like, how did they get there? Don't know. Was it the
Well,
box? Probably.
what I thought, or yeah, now that you say that, it was probably the box that sent them there. But what I thought, and what is possibly even more bleak, is that like they were sent into the Triassic period and they just like lived out millions upon millions of years to get back to the man and the woman.
That is a lot more bleak.
Because we actually get, I didn't know this or I didn't realize before this episode, but Sapphire and Steel can't time travel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. That was in like in assignment 4, where they were like, "Oh, you have to we'll have to wait. We'll be ready when that being gets released in 82 years or whatever it was." It wasn't like they could just go ahead at 82 years and take care of him again. They had to wait 82 years. I don't think it was 82. I think I'm misremembering however many years it was for him to escape.
Yeah, I didn't put that together back then.
But I mean, in some ways, that's less bleak too, though, because it means that Sapphire and Steel probably still had tons of adventures between the Triassic period and the diner of 1948 then.
Or just sat on a rock and waited.
I doubt that. Steel wouldn't have let that fly. God, the bleakness of the ending like kind of reminds me of the ending of Quantum Leap, which I'm about to spoil the ending of Quantum Leap for anyone who like enjoys that show, and also for Kiyan on the off chance that we might watch some of that show for this show. But the ending, so Quantum Leap is a show about a guy who invents time travel, but he's going to be defunded, so he tests it on himself before they can defund him, and basically his consciousness travels through time to people whose lives were wronged in some way, and he has to set it right. And then at the end of the show, like part of the final season is so he can never really get back to like the future where he was, and part of the whole show is they're trying to get him back. And at the end of the show, like it just ends, and they're just like Sam Beckett never got home. He like never got home. He kept time traveling for the rest of his life till he died, jumping between people.
Wow.
Like really bleak ending.
Yeah, sounds like something we could watch this
It's a show
podcast.
that I actually really enjoy that I do think would actually probably lend itself pretty well to this format, because I actually thinking about it now there are actually similarities between that and Sapphire and Steel in some ways, and Doctor Who as well. So be interesting.
How long is it?
Well, it's like 6 seasons of 20 episodes, so we'd have to do it like one
Pretty damn
season at a
long.
time,
Yeah.
but or even just do a Quantum Leap no,
No.
Quantum Leap
We
podcast.
started this so that we wouldn't start any more podcasts. Partially.
Well, we can add it to the list.
Yeah.
Um,
So, speaking of lists, if you don't have anything else to say, I neglected to look up actors, but I did look up a crew member.
Again, like last week, you did that as well.
Oh, did I mention this last week? Because I thought I forgot to mention this last week.
You definitely mentioned
I
looking up a crew member last week.
Ivor Weir, or however you pronounce his name. I noted him down here because I my memory is that I forgot to mention him last week. All right, so I can't even remember. God. So the Sapphire and Steel title sequence is actually designed by this guy named Ivor Weir. So I was like, man, like that's really cool because it's a really cool title sequence. So I looked him up on IMDb, and he only has 4 credits, and 3 of this was like his only major thing that he'd ever done. The other 3 credits were just as like a random graphic designer on like 3 other random shows that I had never heard of, which is unfortunate.
Nice. He did one good thing in his life and then like never contributed to television again.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That might be going a little far, saying he only did one good thing in his life, and it was
Yeah,
this.
I
But like,
realized that the phrasing of that was a little bit unfortunate.
did one notable thing in his life.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
But yeah,
Well, unlike Ivor Weir, who only did one notable thing in his life, most of the actors in the story actually have been in a lot of things. The exception being Joanna Kirby, who plays the woman. The only things I recognized her in were The Bill and a TV series called Underworld, which I noted because I thought it was funny that it was called Underworld. And then she didn't really have a lot of other acting credits. Edward D'Souza, who plays Man, was actually in The Spy Who Loved Me as Sheikh Hussein. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. He's also in the Golden Compass movie, as well as the 1962 adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera. He was in Doctors. He was also in The Avengers. He was in a TV show called The Saint, which I recognized because my dad always raves about it. He was in a 1959 adaptation of Midsummer Night's Dream. And then, get this, he played Mark Corey in Mission to the Unknown on Doctor Who.
Wow.
Yeah, the main character of that one episode. The one episode that didn't feature the Doctor at all. But that is nothing next to Christopher Fairbank, who played Johnny Jack. Christopher Fairbank played the Broker in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What?
He was in Alien 3 as Murphy. He was in the 1989 adaptation of Batman. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. He was also in the Underworld TV show. He was in the Bills, Dead Cars, Bergerac.
Yeah, that show. That one show.
He was in Law and Order UK, which I'm surprised we haven't mentioned yet because that was what's the guy who plays Graham on Doctor Who now?
Bradley Walsh.
That was like his big role before Doctor Who was Law and Order UK.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher Fairbank, he played Fenton in Flatline, the old crotchety man who like chews out Rigsy and like wants to just give up on everything the whole story.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the final actor, John Boswell, the old man, he was in 1984. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest.
Wow.
EastEnders, The Bill, Doctors, and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That last one.
So yeah, those are all the actors for this story. Besides, of course, Joanna Lumley, David McCallum, and David Collings. And Collings we already talked about on Assignment 3 with John. So. Right.
So there's this little documentary. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Counting Out Time. And it basically has Sean Reardon, PJ Hammond, Joanna Lumley, and David McCallum just sitting down and not together, but being interviewed about their time on Sapphire and Steel. So I went ahead and watched that. It's been recommended to me on YouTube for a while now. So I finally just said, what the hell? Took a watch through it. And there was some pretty insightful, making of stuff. So I just kind of took a lot of notes, and I guess I'll just kind of read through them and we can touch on them if we have anything to say. A lot of them are pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. So apparently Reardon is the one who wrote the opening, text of the all regularities will be handled by the forces, etc., etc. He said it took him a week to write that. But he's
a week.
Yeah, a week, and he said he just couldn't get it right. What he said next is something I heavily agree with, and he said that intro was like magic, like that was the key to the show, like and what is it? Transuranic, like that. He said that one word he really loved, like that he included in there, and I agree. I love that. It's become my favorite intro sequence of a TV show, pretty much, and I think it's just perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a great introduction. Probably in my top 10, 5.
Yeah. So apparently the show, we might have talked about this on assignment 1, but apparently the show was under the working title of The Time Menders.
No, I don't think we talked about that.
Well, PJ Hammond he produced a half-hour pilot of it, apparently. and nobody was picking it up. It was rejected by something I couldn't make out what he was saying, and I neglected to look it up. But something called Thames, which is obviously the name of the river that's like in the middle of London. But he mentions a few different, companies that rejected it until it was picked up by ATV. And the reason why this started in a children's slot and was envisioned as a children's show is that ATV told Reardon and Hammond that they would give them 5,000 extra pounds if they made it a children's show. So they did, except not really.
Except not really. They kind of gave up on that after the first episode of Serial.
So apparently the extra 5,000 pounds completely went to David McCallum.
Well,
because that was his budget.
Oh.
And so at this point in the documentary, Joanna Lumley starts talking, and that sort of mystical, like just otherworldly sort of voice that Sapphire has. Like, she doesn't really sound like a normal person. She kind of sounds like she's a higher power, which she is. But that's actually Joanna Lumley's voice. Like, she sounds exactly like Sapphire. And the way she talks, her mannerisms. Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of almost as mind-blowing as when I found out, like, the way Capaldi's doctor speaks is just the way Capaldi speaks. Pretty much.
Wow, shocking. Actors sound like their characters.
Well, no, I mean, their voices often sound the same, but, like, their mannerisms, too, are so heavily...
I know what you were saying. I was just being facetious.
Okay, yeah. So PJ Hammond mentioned that he had worked before on both fantasy shows and detective shows, and that was pretty much his entire inspiration for Sapphire and Steel was like, all right, let's just combine the two. He does periodically in this mention or call Sapphire and Steel sci-fi, but he more often calls it fantasy, which is interesting, I think. But yeah, this is where he was explaining it so succinctly. He was like, yeah, they're like agents, but they have fantasy powers and they go and they solve time problems. Like, that was the basis of the show. And I was like, yeah, okay, it sounds pretty simple, but like where you went with that was not like
where you took that was not that. So,
but he sounded very down to earth about it. Like, if you had just watched, if you just listened to his explanation about what Sapphire and Steel is, you would not imagine that the show that was made was where they would go with it. He says that no one has really asked him too many questions about who Sapphire and Steel are or where they are from. And that, frankly, he doesn't know himself. He said it doesn't matter, and that no one really cares. I don't know whether any of that's true.
Yeah, he sounds like a very interesting guy. I'm going to be honest. He sounds like a very interesting guy. Kind of reinforces the idea that he clearly didn't know what was going on with this show either.
He almost sounds like the Wachowskis do in interviews where they're just like, yeah, like, we just included all stuff that in the Matrix we thought was cool. And I'm just like, people have written like academic level analyses of the Matrix, and they're just like, yeah, we thought this was awesome. Like,
yeah, but that honestly, like, that's the most amazing, mind-blowing thing to me is that people write these critical analyses of these stories, right? They looking for all this deeper meaning and like, what did the author mean and what are they saying with this? And then like the person who created it I just thought it was cool. I just put it there because I thought it was cool.
Well,
this sounds like PJ Hammond is like, yeah, just thought it was cool. I mean, we're sitting here like analyzing Sapphire and Steel. Like, what are they? Like, what do they do? And PJ Hammond's just like, I just put whatever I thought was cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like that idea for some reason.
Well,
it just kind of also reinforces that like you pull out of a story what you want to pull out of it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you, I think, that like the writer or the creators of these stories are not always fully clued into what they're doing, and sometimes it takes many other people and many more years to really see that like maybe they were onto something brilliant that they themselves didn't even understand while they were creating it.
Yeah.
He says that the idea behind Sapphire and Steel comes from, in his words, I would call this like good cop, bad cop, but he says sweet cop, sour cop, where Steel is like the business like one, and Sapphire is the opposite of that. Joanna Lumley actually has an interesting comment here where she says Steel is the brains, but Sapphire is the one who like puts the plans into action.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in assignment 1 and whether or not that was going to be true or not. And
Doesn't really hold true, especially with like some of the indications in this assignment and assignment 5 of like Steel, like what's my name? What's my name?
yeah, kind of seems like Steele is. What is it? Steele seems like the guy who failed upwards into this job, so to
Yeah.
speak. Right?
Yeah. PJ Hammond mentions a couple. I don't know if these were hard and fast rules that they had during production, but he mentions a couple quote unquote rules, I guess I will say, which is no time travel, no blood, no knives, and no guns. And that's probably.
Well, we got both. Well, it's interesting because we got both knives and guns in assignment 5, which happens to be the only one not written by PJ Hammond.
Right. I think, does that one have blood? Do we see blood in that one or no?
I want to say no.
Oh, well, we see blood in assignment 3 now that I think of it, with the slaughterhouses, but it doesn't
yeah.
really count, I guess.
It was animals' blood.
No human blood. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting how they, and I think that was a very deliberate choice on PJ Hammond and everyone else's part of like, we're gonna make this horror like chilling show, but we're not gonna do it with gore. Something weird that they go into talking about is that they didn't seem to think of the stories as separate entities, and I can't imagine why. Like they all the 4 people in the interview were kind of just talking about them, and they mentioned this like, yeah, we didn't really think of these as separate. We didn't really even have names for the stories. They just kind of went one into the other, and they were just one continuous thing. But in my that's weird because in my mind they are very distinct from each other.
That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting because it kind of implies that this boundary between stories was imposed later on, and now that it has been imposed, we are stuck in thinking that they have to be separate. I mean, plot-wise, they are very separate, but I suppose I can see how you could, in theory, you could see this all as one long, I don't know, 26-part adventure of Sapphire and Steel, right? Like,
I can't. That's what I was thinking while I was watching the documentaries. Like, I can't see how that works. How can you say that it's just one long thing? It's very clearly 6 different stories.
yeah, but at the same time, like, I don't know, think about your own life, right? Do you think about your life as one continuous adventure with smaller adventures within, or do you like clearly delineate this is this period, this is this period?
Well, when it comes to like, these are jobs like for Sapphire and Steel, they've been assigned every single time. So in a way,
except for assignment 6.
Except for assignment 6, but in a way, like it is like these are very distinct things. They have these jobs that they set out to do, and then they do them, and then they're assigned again. So
yeah, but I guess
know.
that's just like, that's the tying thread there, is that these are just jobs to them. So we're basically just seeing essentially different days in the life of Sapphire and Steel, right? Like that's the tying thread between the whole thing that makes it one long story, is that this is their regular job. Yeah, every day is different, but it's still their job that they have to do. And in many ways, the resolutions to a lot of the stories are very similar in that it's Sapphire and Steel either sending someone back into the time dimension or sending someone to the future, regardless of setting. That's pretty much how you can describe most of the resolutions.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go on with this too much, but like, I just don't really see the like I'm not convinced by the reasoning behind any of that, but we can just move on.
Fair enough.
Oh, they talk about how dialogue heavy the show is. And they mention, I forget who mentions this, but they say like, yeah, it was like that because it was tied to studios. We couldn't really do much, so we had to do it through dialogue. Makes sense.
Makes sense, but also how much of it is not just the studio, but also like we've got no budget for the sets, so we have to do everything as dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, it was a studio in terms of like they were doing everything in a studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
So Joanna Lumley and David McCallum got involved to different extents behind the scenes. Joanna Lumley has an interesting little bit because that where she says she didn't really want to get involved because it was all men and then there was just her, so she didn't really want to. Yeah, I guess get involved. David McCallum got involved pretty heavily to the point where he was influencing the scripts and the sets as well.
well, when you hire someone like David McCallum and Joanna Lumley, like,
well, yeah, that's weird though because Joanna Lumley seemed to be very hands off with everything. David McCallum actually, though, his contribution to assignment 2 was that like the train tunnel was originally just going to be like black, like you weren't going to be able to see anything, but David McCallum cut out like a little semicircular piece of cardboard and went to like the end of the set and like propped it up on something to make it look like a light at the end of the tunnel very far away. Yeah, so that was pretty interesting. And again, he, like I mentioned before, he had some influence on the scripts. At one point he stayed up with Sean. He stayed up with Reardon, who was the director, not the writer, but he said he stayed up working on scripts with him at one point until 2 a.m. And he also, again, influenced the decision to exclude Silver from the finale. Now, okay, here's like this was made in the 70s and absolutely no safety precautions were in place thing. So, you know the black-eyed Sapphire from assignment 2?
Yes.
So, okay, this is what Joanna Lumley says about that. She said those were contact lenses. It wasn't a special effect. They were as thick as plastic egg boxes.
oh,
That's
my
a
God.
quote. Painted black. And before she put them in, she had an anesthetic jab in her eyes to, I guess, dull the pain.
I can't even put regular contacts in.
Yep. So the blue-eyed Sapphire was also a pain to make. There weren't any computer effects in the show, so everything was done by hand. Reardon says that Sapphire and Steel was probably one of the last shows to not have any digital effects. Which makes sense given like it's late 70s going to the 80s, which is when they would start, I guess, minimally using computers to have effects. But he says that he doesn't regret that. He said it was a good decision. And I think it was either PJ Hammond or Reardon who said this, but like the fact that there are few special effects really makes the ones that happen stand out. And I agree to this to some extent because nowadays, like, it's pretty easy to just throw in whatever you want whenever you want, as long as you have the budget to do it. But that kind of diminishes the impact. You know, whenever we saw Sapphire with her glowing blue eyes, that was a moment in the episodes, you know?
Yeah, the first time we saw that, it was like, wow, how did they do that? Like, what's going, like in assignment 1. And then every subsequent time was like, oh, it's just the blue eyes again, guys. Nothing special here.
I thought it was pretty special every time, but hey, whatever. They also couldn't do the effect if Joanna Lumley's head was moving, so that's why if you go back and watch, every time her eyes glow blue, her head is like held perfectly still. So for assignment 5, this is kind of random, I know, but I'm just kind of the documentary itself was kind of random. So for assignment 5, PJ Hammond said that he just needed a break and he just couldn't think of anything. So I guess kind of suffering from Terry Nation syndrome of like tried to do everything himself but just couldn't.
Well, he tried.
Joanna Lumley said that assignment 5 was her least favorite story, and PJ Hammond said that it's not the direction he would have gone. Which again, we kind of see like that's the one that has the guns, that's the one that has the knives.
It's also the one written by not PJ Hammond,
Yeah.
so.
But he ultimately said it was a good thing. He liked it. there actually wasn't time to finish the last story. It was supposed to end with Sapphire and Steel being trapped in a picture, which is a recurring was a recurring thing. First they got trapped in the painting, and they got trapped in the photographs, and now here again they would get trapped in a picture. But there wasn't time to do it, so they just opted for the diner instead, and opted for that end shot of them zooming out, like framed in the window, which was cool. And again, Silver was supposed to be there, but Dave McCallum talked PJ Hammond out of it. And it ends with all of them saying they were pretty satisfied with the show and how it turned out, and that they enjoyed it.
Huh. Yeah. No, I think we had heard that before. At least I had before we started this show, that they were all pretty pleased with their work on the show and how the show came out.
Right. Yeah. So nice little documentary there. It's on YouTube. YouTube, if you ever want to watch it. Came out in 2007, if the video is to be believed.
Tube.
Yeah.
The tube.
Is that what I said?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh. And that's all I got.
Huh. Nice.
Do you want to rank the shows? We've done 3, so.
Yeah, we could if you want, and then we have an email.
All right. Well, I guess I'll start. This is hard for me, actually.
This is not hard for me, so I'll go first then. So I've got Sapphire and Steel at the top. I've got a very close second, Star Cops, and I've got Children of the Stones, like low.
Dead last.
Dead last. So that's my ranking. And it is very close between Sapphire and Steel and Star Cops. Sapphire and Steel might have the edge because we just watched it. Come back to me in a month and we'll see if it holds.
Yeah, this might be controversial, but I'm going to go Children of the Stones, number 1.
Cancel the podcast.
Star Cops, number 2. Sapphire and Steel, number 3. Yep.
Shut it down, boys. Cancelled. The British TV police are here to take you away. Bake them away, toys.
Toys? Oh, no. Oh, no. Yeah, maybe I should explain my decision. I think the first 2 stories of Sapphire and Steel drag it down beneath the other 2.
Really?
Yep.
You think those 2 stories drag it below the meandering 5-minute recaps of Children of the Stones?
Because the core of Children of the Stones is so solid, pun slightly intended, I guess, that it beats out both Star Cops and Sapphire and Steel for me. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And like I said before, I thought and still do think that the first 2 assignments of Sapphire and Steel are bad, and I can't overlook that, despite how much I think assignments 3 through 6 are potentially better than anything Star Cops and Children of the Stones gave us.
So we have an email this week. Subject line: Sapphire and Steel. Encouragement. Hi there. Thanks for your Sapphire and Steel podcasts. Like your many other podcasts, they have been great to listen to. I'm writing to tell you that the stories get better. Note that we're recording this after assignment 2 has gone out. So this email would have arrived after assignment 2. Assignment 1 and 2 are my least favorites, and it is hard to put into words just how boring assignment 2 is. Maybe to like it, you have to have a stronger connection with British history. I have no idea why anyone thinks it is good. Oof, my heart. All the others I like, some of them a lot. I won't spoil it too much, but assignment 3 is weirdly entertaining, partly because of the terrible 1970s interior design and the bizarre special effects, also Silver and the giant baby. Assignment 4 is really, really good. If it was a Doctor Who story, it would be one of the best. Assignment 5 is very different from the others, and Assignment 6 is both creepy and relatively short. Perhaps you'll disagree with my judgment, but I'm pretty sure you'll like at least some of the insane ideas. Since you're B7 fans, maybe a topic for discussion is whether Steele is like Avon and or Tarrant, that is arrogant and condescending, but with no obviously useful skills. Keep up the podcasts, Doc Holly. I think this is the first email we've received from Doc Holly, or I think that's pronounced Doc Holly. Doc Holly. So first I want to say thank you for reaching out. It's good to hear from you. And in terms of your email, well, we did pretty much enjoy everything after Assignment 3 unilaterally. So...
yeah, I definitely agree on all of the points that you're making, or that you made.
In terms of the are they like Avon or Tarrant? Well, I'd say Avon had useful skills.
He just never used them on the show.
Yeah, he just liked to be lazy. Tarrant, on the other hand, Tarrant came in as a pilot and didn't ever pilot anything. So
I was actually thinking about this recently, and you know, you're kind of bringing it up here, is like, we always knocked classic Who companions for like Mel for being a programmer and that never coming up, or Perry for being a botanist and that never coming up. But like Avon was, he was a programmer, right? And then like Tarrant was a pilot, and like that Tarrant being a pilot kind of came up once. But like Avon being a programmer never like mattered, you know? Although I guess the justification for that was that it was part of his backstory with him trying to rob banks and failing, which is why he was caught up in all of this to begin with. So I guess that's why we were more okay with it. But even still, it kind of does have the same, like, it's the thing of like, it's kind of similar to like Mel and Perry, for example.
Yeah, but at the same time, when Avon takes over the Liberator, like, he steps into a leadership role, so he actually does things.
Yeah.
And I think that's also part of the reason why we were more okay with it.
Sure.
I do think like Steele might kind of be in that ilk. Like we've gone on in this episode quite a bit about how Steele is definitely like a lot more of a bumbling fool than I think he's given credit for being. And Sapphire is definitely the one with all the actual manageable, trackable skills here.
Mm-hmm.
But on that front, I hope, Doc Holly, that you enjoy our episodes, or enjoyed, I should say, our episodes on assignments 3 through 6, the closing out of the show.
Right. And I hope we weren't too negative on 1 and 2.
Well, I wasn't that negative on assignment 2. I can say that with confidence.
Sure. I hope all right. I hope I wasn't too negative then. I
hope I wasn't too negative on assignment 1, but assignment 2 I can say with confidence that I was not.
Yeah. I won't hesitate to say again that I dislike them, but I don't want to harp on that. Which I guess not hesitating to say again is harping on, but hey, you know, whatever.
Semantics.
Whatever.
Semantics.
So we also got a message from Jurgen about the Goosey Goosey Gander nursery rhyme, which was apparently in assignment 1. He pointed out that Wikipedia has an interesting little bit on the interpretations of the nursery rhyme. So I'll just read verbatim from Wikipedia because it might have something to do with the show. So some have suggested, and we get a little citation like according to whom, but that doesn't matter. So some have suggested that kind of matters, I guess. Some have suggested that this rhyme refers to priest holes, hiding places for itinerant Catholic priests during the persecutions under King Henry VIII, his descendant Edward, Queen Elizabeth, and later under Oliver Cromwell. Once discovered, the priest would be forcibly taken from the house, quote, thrown down the stairs, unquote, and treated badly. Amateur historian Chris Roberts suggests further that the rhyme is linked to the propaganda campaign against the Catholic Church during the reign of Henry VIII. Other interpretations exist. Mark Cocker and Richard Mabey note in Birds Britannica that the grey-lag goose has for millennia been associated with fertility, that goose still has a sexual meaning in British culture, and that the nursery rhyme preserves these sexual overtones. Quote, in my lady's chamber, unquote. So, yeah, I definitely think first a bit of that has something to do with Sapphire and Steel. Because throughout that story, we're getting these flashbacks to the past of like bad things happening in the house, whether that's in the house that they're in or the painting that Sapphire gets sucked into.
Right.
So a little bit of interestingness there, I guess.
That's weird.
And so much of that episode, like so many of the shots in that episode have the stairs in them. Like just think of all the like visuals from that episode and think like how I would almost say like an overwhelming amount of that episode has stairs on screen.
kind of wild to remember that that's a set that I guess they just built stairs. Yep. The story.
Now looking back, I think Assignment 1 probably has the most impressive set because it legit looks like a house.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the other sets.
Well, the diner in this one's pretty good, and the thrift store, the Lost and Found store, whatever it was pretty good.
Yeah, true. Like the railway station, I guess.
The railway station was very questionable, but throwback to wow, all the corridors look the same.
We stopped doing the low budget like shenanigans thing, I guess, because it wasn't funny or noticeable enough for us to do it. So
no.
Hey,
the segment wasn't a hit, so we excised it. Well, on that, I'm completely out of things to say on Sapphire and Steel.
As am I.
For the foreseeable future. Is this when we announce what we're doing next week?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, we're not taking a break. We're going directly into season 4 of Inevitable.
Right.
And next week, well, why don't you do the honors?
Well, whoa, I wasn't ready for this.
I can do it. It's The Prisoner.
You do it.
We're watching The Prisoner. Yep, we're diving right into the adventures of number 6 as he's brought to the village against his will.
The oft-recommended show.
Yep.
I was trying to think of another like adjective, and I just like completely blanked.
Wild ride. It's not really an adjective; it's a noun, but an adjective and a noun. But yeah, wild ride, roller coaster of a show, insane balls to the wall spy story, because that's what it is. I've watched The Prisoner through twice, and
it's about to be three
times, and
I haven't watched any of it.
It's an excellent show, I'll say that. There are some episodes here and there that are not up to par, but overall, I'm glad we're going to be watching it.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've always heard good things about The Prisoner, and I'm glad to finally be able to experience it for myself.
Yeah, and like Keith said when we recorded with him for Assignment 3, I forget whether you said this on recording or off, but the ending, well, it was definitely off because we didn't announce the show. The ending has to be seen to be believed. And yeah, that's all I'll say for now, I guess.
I'm ready. Well, on that note, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the upcoming The Prisoner, and final thoughts on Sapphire and Steel. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a classic sci-fi podcast. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And like we said, next week, we'll be back starting The Prisoner. But until then, the end.